So I think we are going to kick off the webinar. Apologies for the delay. So thank you everyone for joining this month's Tadamon Talks. I'm Svetlana Baeva, I'm the communications lead with UNDP Europe and Central Asia, and I'm going to be kicking off our session. As we mentioned already, for those of you just joined, we currently have French translation, so make sure to select French in the control panel at the bottom of the screen. That's the globe icon so that you can hear the French translation. And if you're here with us for the first time, Tadamon Talks is a webinar series that explores alternative finance for civil society empowerment. And in some of our past series, we've talked about some of the wonderful opportunities that Tadamon, the Tadamon platform offers. And we've explored insights and learnings on crowdfunding and many other topics. And we've brought together some of the alternative finance experts and crowdfunding platform leaders in the region. So this initiative is powered by Tadamon. It's a cross-regional community platform for civil society empowerment. It's sponsored by the Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development, ISFD, and it's managed by the Islamic Development Bank, ISDB, and implemented by us at the United Nations Development Program. So for this month's Tadamon's talk, you're going to learn a little bit more about crowdfunding in Africa. We've gathered some of the movers and shakers in the region to talk to you about first the ecosystem, some of the insights into the crowdfunding scene at the moment, and some perhaps successful stories that might inspire you when crafting your own campaigns. So as already noted, this webinar is going to be in English, but we have French translation. And as you know, we're currently recording this session and streaming it live on Tadamon's Facebook page. So we'll be sending the recording to you following the end of this event. So before we jump into the core part of our program today, I'd like to give a word to our partners at ISDB and ISFD for short welcoming remarks. Over to you, Ayaz.
Thank you, Svelta, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar to talk about non-traditional way of resource mobilization for the CSOs. As you are all aware, we are talking about a new ways of mobilizing funds to be more sustainable, not to rely only on the traditional fund. And this is where we and Islamic Development Bank, with the generous support from our colleague on the Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development, decided to have such a big program, NGOs Empowerment for Poverty Reduction, with particular focus on invention and on new ways of gathering and mobilize resources. And today, as we all aware of, we got an esteemed speakers who has experience in crowdfunding all over the world with particular focus on Africa. And that's mean this is a good chance for all of us to benefit from their experience, to hear more about the challenges that they faced and the lesson learned in order to avoid it in our campaigns and in our work. And as you are aware of crowdfunding in Africa, it's growing up and up day by day. If you are following the numbers and you're following the campaigns, you can notice clearly that there is a strong base for crowdfunding on Africa. There is lots of diaspora, there is lots of philanthropists, as well as community gathering together to support each other. Because at the end of the day, this is the only way of solidarity while we support each other. And on behalf of the Islamic Development Bank, I would advise you all as a multilateral agencies to put more efforts on campaigning, because at the end of the day, the more you put on this effort, the more you get for your community and for your organization on the ground. And I don't want to take much of that. I welcome all of you on this important series of webinars. By the way, this is not the first and not the last one, but each time we focus on region, each time we focus on topic. So I encourage you to keep following us on our social media and on our Tadamon aggregated platform to know more about our activity and to contribute, because this is a platform, it's for you. We are from our sponsor and the implementation also from ISFD and ISDB in strategic partnership with our colleague from UNDP. We are all here to facilitate your work on this platform. So we can assume that this is your platform to campaign. This is your platform to be visible. This is your area to flourish on the field of crowdfunding, and mainly with particular focus on poverty alleviation. Thank you, and get back to you, Sfilta.
Thank you so much, Ayaz, for the remarks. I'd also like to welcome Mohammad Mustafa Jabre, from ISFD, to say a couple of words as well.
Thank you, Svetla. Assalamu alaikum. I hope that my voice is clear enough. You can hear me, Svetla?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Thank you, thank you. Now it's good afternoon. Some minutes ago it was good morning. I would like first to start by welcoming the guests today joining us for the 8th Tadamon Talks. This is a series of Tadamon talks that is being taken place to cover different topics, important topics in the area of supporting the CSOs, and with special focus on crowdfunding. Of course, I would start by welcoming Elizabeth, Kai, Patrick, and Matt. Thank you for joining us today. You will be inspiring all of us and enlightening all of us with your extensive experience in the alternative financing. Just I would like, before giving you the time and to take your time in introducing your ideas and extensive experience, just to give you some background about the ISFD, or the Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development, which is the poverty alleviation arm of the Islamic Development Bank. As you know, I'm not sure if everybody is aware about this, the bank introduced the Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development as an endowment fund, which put some limitations on the, the way that we are interfere and participate in some projects. But also, meanwhile, we are implementing all our work, which is aligning the Sharia, the Islamic Sharia. ISFD is participating different types of projects, which is all addressing the poverty in OIC member countries. We're supporting projects in education, health, economic empowerment, community development, building the resilience, all these projects that addressing the issue of poverty in all around the OIC member countries. We're contributing and participating in supporting these projects. The NGO Empowerment for Poverty Reduction program is one of these programs, actually. And this program was introduced in order to support DCSOs by building their capacities, introducing them to the alternative financing, giving them better visibility. Meanwhile, we are all well aware that the most important challenge that most of all these CSOs facing usually is financing and funding their initiatives, whatever and however it is successful. The program is, covering this part through the platform, which is one of the outcomes from its communication strategy to build this platform with our main partner, implementing partner, the UNDP, our colleagues in the UNDP. Thank you for your extensive work, and you're doing an excellent job. And in addition, this program was extended. It was started as NGO Empowerment for Poverty Reduction, and now we have extended this program to include an additional program that is being hosted on the same platform. That is the Tadamon Accelerator. And this Tadamon Accelerator is also addressing the poverty and supporting the member countries' response to COVID that was introduced when the COVID hit, actually. We introduced this program with support from ISFD with 8 million from ISFD, another 47 million supposed to be mobilized. We have so far achieved about 80% of this amount, and 12 countries so far covered and served through this program. Also, we have the open call for the proposals which we have launched to cover the emergency medical response, education in emergency, and building community resilience. These proposals are subject to receive some grant, I would say, help and assistance in order to support these projects. Meanwhile, of course, grants will never be enough. Accordingly, the alternative finance is one of the most important tools that we are using in order to support as well these projects. The CSOs that we are building their capacity is supposed to be complemented with this important element to ensure the success of their initiatives and the projects. I know that I have talked much more than I have expected, but I would leave the floor for you now. This is important background about the ISFD, the Islamic Development Bank as well, and why we are supporting this project. I would like again to thank you, extend my appreciation and thanks for all colleagues who's working on arranging and managing these events. And thank you all again. Back to you, Svetla.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Now I think we can go to the core part of our event today. I'd like to give the word to Marina Petrovic, who's our innovative finance and technology expert and at UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub, who's going to be moderating our session and will introduce the first participants, our key speakers.
Thank you, Svetla. I hope you can hear me. And hello, lovely Tadamon crowd. I'm really happy to see so many people attending today's webinar. I hope you'll have a great time, meet our amazing speakers, and learn how they're making an impact on local communities. Questions, feedback, and comments are more than welcome. Don't forget to use social media, post, share, and yes, let's discuss today's Tadamon talks. With us today, we have Elizabeth Howard, founding director of and CEO of the African Crowdfunding Association, Hiai Malai, CEO of Mchanga and entrepreneur, Matt Roberts Davis, CEO of Thunderfund, Patrick Schofield, CEO of Beccabody. Dear speakers, we are delighted and grateful to have you here today with us. We want to learn more about your work, your impact, and of course, discuss with you how do you see crowdfunding for Africa. Firstly, we start with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, please tell us more about yourself, your organization, and yes, each speaker has 2 to 5 minutes to present themselves, and then we are coming with questions. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Marina. Great to be on this call, and thank you so much for organizing it. My name is Elizabeth Howard, and I am the CEO of the African Crowdfunding Association, joining you from Cape Town in South Africa. ACFA, as we're known, is a non-profit organization that acts as an industry association for all crowdfunding organizations in Africa, and also those based in the diaspora with operations in Africa. Our main job is to set standards and norms for the crowdfunding industry, starting with things like charters of good conduct to sort of self-police and self-regulate the industry, and moving on towards much deeper collaborations with African regulatory authorities to push forward an appropriate regulatory framework for investments-based crowdfunding, so debt crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, and everything in between. And happy to talk a little bit more about that later. We also do market development. We help develop the crowdfunding industry. We are very excited about the ways that crowdfunding can be used for CSOs, whether it's municipal crowdfunding, or crowdfunding for education, collaborations with government, in addition to your classic donations and sort of investment-based crowdfunding. So very excited to be on this call, and yeah, look forward to our discussion. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. We're really happy to have you on board, because the whole idea behind today's talks is to have different perspectives on the crowdfunding, perspective from the people who are working with legislative, with the regulations, and of course, people that are implementing. They're like having sort of the hands-on experience with crowdfunding in Africa. So based on your experience, what is the crowdfunding ecosystem like in Africa? How many platforms are there, and how do they differ from one another? And also, if I can maybe add one more question, what is the situation, of course, with regulation, and is that changing? So sort of the architecture of the crowdfunding. Thank you.
Thanks, Marina. Those are excellent questions, and they're actually linked. So if you look at the number of platforms and the sectors of platforms in Africa today, within the African Crowdfunding Association, we see about 45 established crowdfunding platforms, and probably around double that number in startup platforms. These are crowdfunding platforms that are not yet quite established. And if you look at the sectors, the types of crowdfunding that is happening, there's obviously a preponderance of platforms that are able to operate in the unregulated space, which is donations and rewards-based crowdfunding, as well as agri-crowdfunding. Agri-crowdfunding might be less well known to some people in the audience, but it's a highly popular type of crowdfunding in West Africa and beyond, also in South Africa and East Africa. And when it comes to your investment-based crowdfunding, the types that are most developed sort of, in the global north, we don't have very many platforms, probably a handful today, that are established, sustainable debt and equity crowdfunding platforms. And that sort of links to your second question, Marina, around regulation. Many of us on the call might not know what requires regulation and what doesn't, but basically any types of crowdfunding that in which a member of the general public is offered an investment opportunity, whether it's to lend money or to buy shares or to participate in the profits of a young company, that is actually a regulated activity, and it requires to be really effective, it requires a custom bespoke regulatory framework, which means that there's a tremendous amount of work required on behalf of the regulators. Typically, these are the capital markets regulators, less so the central banks, but sometimes the central banks and prudential control authorities will weigh in on debt crowdfunding. And that has been a long journey for a number of countries. At this point, we're seeing the most progress in East Africa. And when I say progress, I mean a realistic chance of having an appropriate ground up, regulatory framework that has been designed in deep consultation with the crowdfunding platforms. There are other regulatory frameworks in Africa today that have been put in place, and one of them is Nigeria. As of last year, or early this year actually, there are also frameworks in Angola and in Tunisia and Morocco, of course. I think they were some of the first. There is a draft framework in Ghana. But to bring the focus back to East Africa, where I believe there's the most potential, there is an engagement, a commitment from 5 East African countries, that is Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, and Burundi, to actually work together on a harmonized regulatory framework for investment-based crowdfunding. That is a real long-haul project, a 2-year project that has taken a long time to get funding for. But we are very pleased that we have actually secured funding for this, and it's going to result in a new new activity and a new part of the crowdfunding industry that can finally develop with a lot more certainty. And we're excited about how that is going to create jobs for youth through entrepreneurship. I'm not talking just about startups. I'm talking about, you know, any type of alternative funding that is required from the industries that are flourishing in these markets today. And in parallel, there really has been an awareness in the broader capital markets development space and the investment space of the insufficiency of bank finance. Well, that's not new, but also the insufficiency of venture capital. And so we're excited to work with the regulators on designing financial instruments that really work for small businesses. So not just debt and equity, but as I said, everything in between: profit sharing, revenue sharing, combinations of types of crowdfunding, blended finance, moving, you know, from grants as a young consumer-facing company towards debt, and really mobilizing your user base. And so ACFA really is excited about not only those regulations, but the market development that's going to happen in parallel. So that would be the biggest trend I would say to look out for is development of crowdfunding in East Africa. And yeah, we know that there's strong demand from regulatory authorities across the continent for technical assistance to put in place these regulatory frameworks. And that's the core focus right now. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. When we are speaking about the trends, do you also see some trends like diaspora funding, or sort of the more urgency from diaspora to reinvest in their countries? One thing, and also, do you see some trends in terms of like giving the money, like investing? Is it the mobile money? Is it a cash donations? Are the credit cards? So yeah.
Yes, I think it's an excellent question, and it's a burning issue. Everyone talks a lot about the diaspora and the potential to move from remittances towards investment, given the sheer volumes of capital obviously that flows the continent. But putting in place the channels for retail investors, for members of the general public in the diaspora to get their amounts, to get their investment contributions to African beneficiaries is extraordinarily hard. What I see from my proximity to the investment space, and I'm talking about venture capital funds, SME funds, angel networks, and syndicates, is that there are a lot of people in the diaspora trying to set up syndicates, trying to set up platforms, viable cross-border investment channels. And they're coming up against this barrier where, because they're in the diaspora, they need to have local licenses. That means, you know, a European Union license in the case of crowdfunding, which is very onerous. And then there are certain restrictions and uncertainties within that license that make it hard for them to navigate a real business model, getting that money, you know, from Europe into the beneficiaries. Who those beneficiaries can be? Must they be, you know, restructuring to sort of put the money into a Europe-based entity? What are the issues around foreign exchange? What are the issues around getting a sort of a Kenyan SME to meet the standards of, in terms of governance and reporting of a European SME? What are the equivalent norms that they have to adhere to? So it sounds great in theory, but in practice, it's really, really difficult. And I think there is a need for grant funding in the space to do some of those heavy lifting, just in terms of structuring and putting in place these channels on behalf of these entrepreneurs. The economics are challenging enough as it is, but these additional burdens of navigating compliance and regulations are really off-putting. So there definitely is a strong demand. I run an angel investor network, and I see maybe a new organization per month based in the diaspora, whether it's Brussels, France, UK, Germany, trying to get this going. There are, of course, the examples of the established crowdfunding platforms like LenderHand, and I think there's, well, they have a sort of an impact investment play from Europe to Africa, and have had success with a debt product, and they're also, you know, trying to expand beyond that, if I'm not misquoting them. And I think there's a wave of consolidation that'll take place with this new European Union directive that'll add to the sustainability and hence the sort of flexibility of the instruments that we might see coming from Europe. So yeah, very big question, and one that we hope will achieve more, will attract more attention and more support this year.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. The last question from me is, what do you see as sort of the biggest challenges of the platforms? And also, we're speaking here about huge territory, where different countries usually have different laws and regulations. So
Absolutely.
what do you see like are the biggest challenges, and how can you maybe help with the crowdfunding, African Crowdfunding Association? Yes.
Sure. Yeah, at the level of the platforms, I think my colleagues will speak more about it. I think sustainability is a real issue, and that it is linked to regulations to some extent, but not only. On the regulatory side, you know, in East Africa, we have some exceptionally good regulators and very forward thinking, very open, and the focus is on capital markets development. How can they build a new corner of the capital markets that is going to catalyze growth? And there's an awareness that, you know, SME stock markets or segments of the stock markets don't function as intended. So, you know, what else can they do? How can crowdfunding fill the gaps? That is the focus. That is great. That is very easy to work with. There are other markets where the focus is on fraud prevention, and there's a strong distrust between regulators and market participants, and that is sort of historical and justified, but it prevents a discussion around development. And I think every regulator has to think about what they're trying to build, not what they're trying to prevent, or not only what they're trying to prevent. So ACFA has done a tremendous amount of dialogue and engagement with many regulatory authorities. And I think it's a journey of trust building that, you know, ACFA has to be a bit of an interface between the industry and the regulators. We need to go and identify the highest quality, most reliable, trustworthy entrepreneurs out there that are building the most robust platforms and have all the right intentions. We have to be that identifying partner on behalf of the regulator. We have to build trust platform by platform, entrepreneur by entrepreneur, to shift the dynamic on the regulator in the regulators' room towards building. And yeah, I think there's also momentum that will come with the implementation of a harmonized framework, and, you know, hopefully that generates the required results for other regulators to be more confident and to take what they perceive as more risk. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And really, I wish you all the best with your work, and of course with the work of African Crowdfunding Association. I think all of us that are from Europe, we remember when we were going through the similar things with the European Crowdfunding Association, and there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you so much. I will now continue with the other speakers. Of course, if you can stay to be perfect. If not, definitely let's stay in touch. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, now we are moving forward with the three other amazing speakers. So Kiai, Matt, Patrick, I will not start with one of you. I'm just giving you the floor. Kiai, Matt, then Patrick, to introduce yourself. Please, let's say like up to 5 minutes per presenter, and then we'll start with questions. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here on the Tadamon talks. My name is Chai Mulay. I'm a co-founder of Mchanga Africa. Mchanga Africa is now 10 years old. We founded the platform in 2012. Mchanga Africa was primarily designed with the family in mind. So I'm sure in the Middle East, just as in Africa, we have situations where there's already crowdfunding within the family, whether it's weddings, education needs, funerals, and life events like that. So the platform was designed primarily to facilitate that type of activity and digitize that type of activity. As you know, there's been a lot of urbanization that has happened in the last few decades, and so the model where people are together in one community physically is no longer the case. So Mchanga is primarily designed to be able to enable participation from remote locations for the same causes. So digitizing the spirit of Harambee, and Harambee is what it is called in East Africa, which means coming together to contribute to a cause. crowdfunding. So Mchanga, as I said, is now 10 years old. It initially started for individuals and now is being used by CSOs, NGOs, and larger organizations over time for the same activities. It has really allowed us to accelerate fundraising, increase participation. You are able to start a fundraiser and manage the fundraiser digitally all the way through and communicate, the varying stages of the fundraiser and ultimately raise more money by making it much more efficient. So today, Mchanga is now Africa's largest crowdfunding platform by volume, with over 1.3 million individuals donating to close to 60,000 campaigns. We are established in Kenya, Uganda, and Ghana, and we are piloting in Senegal, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Mchanga's success so far has really been driven by the availability of digital payment infrastructure. So as Elizabeth was saying, in East Africa, for the last decade or so, we've been using mobile money, primarily M-Pesa. And this has really allowed the ecosystem to flourish in terms of payments. That is the primary driver for payments on Mchanga, followed by credit card. So that's just a little bit about the platform and really looking forward to answering more questions.
Thank you so much, Chiai, apologies. And yes, we are moving to Matthew and then Patrick. Thank you.
Thanks, Marina. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt. I first got into crowdfunding at Kiva in the United States, an amazing platform that's leveraged over $1.7 billion of 0% interest loans around the world to small businesses. So seeing this model that you can change the financial system, that it doesn't have to be fixed, that there's community funding is something that people are interested in, that's something people want to participate in. So I moved to Kenya a few years ago. I actually started my journey in Kenya with Mchanga. And so I saw Mchanga become this big platform with over 1 million users. And still I wanted to look at how crowdfunding could help creatives as well as small businesses, looking at a different kind of vertical of crowdfunding. And so came to Thunderfund, which was at the time already active in South Africa. Thunderfund's a rewards-based crowdfunding platform. So instead of a donation, you offer something in exchange for the cash. So it could be a product, a service, experience, anything like that. And since then, we've also launched in the Gambia. And so we've seen how crowdfunding works across many different environments across Africa, and how the interest of both the businesses, the individuals, and the organizations that want to be involved, as well as the community who are willing to support these projects. I think, as Chai mentioned, the culture has been around for a very long time. People have already been funding through community, but with the technical revolution, with online access, mobile money, social media, all those things coming together, it makes it much more appealing that someone could fund a project through a platform that's completely transparent and accountable. So the concept makes a lot of sense. We have a way to go in terms of the growth of where the industry is heading towards. And so a lot of that has come through the partners that we've worked with and the people who have formed the crowd. So very excited to be here and to look forward to what Africa crowdfunding could become.
Thank you so much, Matt. And yes, Patrick.
Good morning, everyone. And I'm also joining from Cape Town, South Africa. So with Elizabeth at the side of the world. It's interesting, just listening to Matt's journey has really taken from recognizing the power of crowdfunding within the donation space and then wanting to focus more on the entrepreneurship and creative space. And my journey has been almost the other way around. I started very much in the entrepreneurship and creative space with the first platform. And a bit over the last 4 or 5 years, I really began to see my kind of passion sits very much with creating a healthy and educated society and recognizing that underpinning economic growth is a society which needs to be educated and well-skilled and needs to be healthy. And they say in many places, many families are one crisis away from poverty. Now, Mohammed spoke earlier about how we're looking to reduce poverty on a kind of global basis, and very much in our region that we're speaking about now. And I was like, how can crowdfunding be powerful in doing so? So 2016, 2015, we took on the reins of BackerBuddy from the late founder of the platform, Alan Buthan. And over the last 5 years, we've grown it into, by size, raised the most funds of any platform in Africa through crowdfunding, around $24 million US. It's been an incredible journey seeing how powerful crowdfunding can be. What I do recognize right now is that crowdfunding is really just taking off in Africa. And one of the questions I think we should be asking here is why has it taken so long? And I think Elizabeth spoke to it, and what platforms do are in many ways as an answer to it. It's about trust. Elizabeth mentioned, that the regulatory environment in Europe is very different to the many different regulatory environments we have in Africa. I really don't think one is better than the other. It's not like the European regulations are better than than what we have in Africa. We just have different systems. And I think one of the powerful things around crowdfunding is that the platforms we have look to answer that challenge, in that each of the platforms provide a level of trust through validation and vetting, and on the other side, an unusual or non-traditional form of validation, and that is through crowd validation itself. So really, it's been like very much with Chai and with Matt. My journey in crowdfunding started over 10 years ago, and we're really excited to see within this environment now, especially driven by the impact of COVID and the massive shift to online commerce. I think we really are at the beginning of a golden age in terms of the impact of crowdfunding in Africa, both from the investment side and through to the donations and giving side.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And definitely, I would just emphasize what you said in terms of the trust. I think also, like from our side, from the UNDP, ISDB, ISFD side, we are also, because of that, in the story of the crowdfunding. We want to also see by our example, by the impact that we are doing in all of our organizations, to show the trust. We are also here to support the ever-evolving this crowdfunding ecosystem in crowdfunding in Africa, and also to support the investors, the communities and diaspora that are investing in this type of projects by providing them a sense of trust. I would like to start maybe with one sort of the more open, more creative question. What are some success stories that you have seen on your platform, or in general that you think might be useful for your audience? Maybe Matt, I will start now with you, because I do not know now if this is true, but one of my favorite movies, Whiplash, I saw it was also funded through your platform. So I don't know if you can maybe also say something about that, but then also like continue with the projects, of course, that maybe the wider public will also like to hear.
Thank you. No, that's a great way in. So trying to think of the exact stories to tell is difficult because there's so many. We've had theaters that were on the verge of closing down, be rescued by the community. We've had music artists that want to create music, but they don't have the budget to create the album, crowdfund to release that. You can look at crowdfunding going back as far as Statue of Liberty or many things that crowdfunding has done without the name crowdfunding yet existing. But really, a lot of our success stories have come through the partnerships that we've managed to have. So working in the Gambia with UNCDF, we've managed to support 8,000 small businesses out there. So you can really see the impact when there's a a good focus and effort on even very tiny businesses that can tap into the diaspora, tap into the community for funding. Yeah, so it's really, for me, the success story is those partners that we've built in each of the countries we work in.
Thank you so much. Definitely, we will also share all the links from all of the platforms that, of course, we're now presenting. And I think the big part is on the community, on the public that we have here to do their own research. I saw, maybe before I go forward with Yai and Patrick, Mohammed, do you have any question?
Yeah, thank you, Marina. Actually, yes, I have a question, which is also I'm trying to enrich the discussion, because maybe my question is for all our guests, in order to also maybe have an idea about they have tackled some of the challenges that usually being faced by the crowdfunding. So my question is a combination of different questions. And I think Elizabeth have listed, but Patrick, Matthew, and Kia is with us. So this is for discussion. I'm asking this question, which is combining of maybe 3 or 4 questions. As you know, and Patrick have highlighted this, it's not a matter of just collecting money. And you know, it's all about impact. We have, at the beginning of the discussion, we started talking about the poverty alleviation and how the financing is the biggest challenge actually for the CSOs. And my question here is how we are going to measure the successful campaigns in terms of impact. I'm talking about impact here. And monetary wise, of course, there is some kind of ratios and measures to decide on this. Meanwhile, what are these topics which considered to be responded better than others? And of course, I believe that there is some differences on the level of response, which is relevant to the culture, religion, belief backgrounds, all of these issues, of course, impacting this level of success, and how they have tackled the infrastructure differences, especially when we are talking about the electronic issues and using the platform and the Visa, the MasterCards, all of these, you know, tools that's supposed to be used, how they have tackled these challenges in order to overcome and ensure that these campaigns are successful. So I would appreciate if this is being considered as one question, so to be answered and increase, you know, the level of the engagement for all the CSOs attending with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Whoever wants to take this question, Patrick, Yai, Matthew.
I can start, and then
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Patrick.
I think the first point would be measuring impact not from a funds raised perspective, but from an active engagement perspective. Let's say you want to fund a hospital or community project. Even if someone from that community can support even the equivalent of $1, it shows that they care about that project and they're going to look after it. So if a project comes in as a pure donation, it's less likely that the community is going to look after it and take responsibility, compared to if the community's been involved even in a relatively small financial way, but in some way it shows that this is a project that they want to exist. And so for me, the number of supporters represents engagement, active engagement, not engagement by likes on social media, but on actually I'm going to put what little I have towards this. So that would be a key measure of how to realize the value of crowdfunding, especially in our markets, because we may not be cash rich, but we're people rich and rich in many other ways. And that's something that we'd want to capture in the metrics. In terms of the infrastructure differences, you know, with Thunderfund, South Africa and the Gambia are quite far apart in terms of what infrastructure is available. So South Africa is likely to have international and local credit card, Visa card. In the Gambia, there's a lot of cash donations through bank deposits. We have to have agents on the ground to really work with each of the campaigns and funders to support that. So a lot more hand-holding. And then in Kenya, it's a mobile-first economy, so everything has to be mobile. I'll give Chai to the mobile part because he's got a lot more experience there, but definitely each country has their own ways of doing things, and whether it's the diaspora, whether it's the local community, trying to measure that kind of diversity and support coming from different directions, I think is a really interesting measure beyond the simple amounts that are raised.
Sure, and if I can just add, Mohammed Mustafa, you mentioned the word impact, and how do you ensure that the impact is tracked across the fundraising? It's not just about collecting funds. I just want to state again that these platforms are really tools, right? So we start with existing communities that already have existing projects, right? And these platforms are then tools to enhance that already existing activity. So the community becomes like the basis of the success and the tracking of the impact. So in Kenya, for example, the fundraisers that tend to do best are fundraisers that already, take an existing community and just digitize them. So you find that religious organizations, mosques, churches, that already have projects are very successful in now taking those projects online and digitizing them. Community-based organizations, the ones that are, maybe 10 to 15 individuals that are doing, direct impact in terms of water and sanitation, those tend to be very successful. NGOs that have a broader reach, maybe broader programs across the nation. But again, what becomes recurring here is that there's already existing infrastructure and existing participation. And so the crowdfunding platforms then just become enablers. Of course, in the digital environment, then you can add features like balances. So as people are donating, you can see in real time how much is being collected, which obviously then has an impact on donations. You can track the use of those funds much more easily through the reporting features of some of the crowdfunding platforms. But I think the common denominator is that there's existing communications, and these are enhancing tools.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
As a final comment there, I pretty much agree with everything that Madam Chai had brought in here, and just to emphasize that the discussion around infrastructure, the level of impact is directly driven by the ability for the ease of which people can actually support or invest in businesses, organizations, or charities. And Chai emphasized that each country in Africa has quite different infrastructure needs. Matt said same likewise. And there's a question later on around why is it important to have Africa-based crowdfunding platforms? Why not just use the big international Seedrs, Crowdcube, GoFundMe, and so forth? And that is your answer. It's that each country in Africa has quite different payment collection systems, and yes, credit cards obviously international and so forth, but it really is. It's critically important to have local homegrown platforms to allow people within each of our countries to actually support or get behind businesses and causes that are important. On the reporting side, understanding the actual impact, as Chai mentioned, more and more platforms are recognizing that the value that is delivered to the backer or the donor is not a successful campaign raise, but actually the impact that is created from that campaign. And the evidence of that is delivered through an ecosystem of updates, of impact updates that more and more platforms do focus on. So on that side, if you think it would be extremely costly for a platform or a large-scale agency to try and individually send out updates or reports on campaigns that are often quite small, let's say a couple of $1,000 for the smaller ones. And again, the platforms allow the gathering and disbursement or sharing of impacts or evidence of impact for each individual campaign at a level that that is feasible, because they are being updated or shared by each individual project. So yeah, it's very much critically important to have local platforms, both in terms of ability for people to support, and of course on the other side to actually show that evidence of impact on the ground.
Thank you so much for the really fantastic answers. One of the questions that I also have is, how do you see matching funds? Do you think that, for example, the matching funds would increase the success ratio of the campaigns? Do you have any examples of it, or like experience? Yes. So whoever wants to take it over.
Yeah, I can take that. Right now in South Africa, we have $350,000 of matching funds for small businesses, especially those which have been affected by the disaster, youth run and women run. And so these are businesses that the bank recognizes have been through hardship. They have had a history of having good credit records and, really trying to be something, but they risk closing down because of current circumstances. So with the matching fund support, we're actually able to see that we get much more support than the matching funds themselves. In a previous research, we've seen 4 or 5 times the level of the match being raised. We've used matching funds in a timely basis so that it could be used to build momentum at the beginning of a campaign. It doesn't just have to be one for one throughout. There's lots of innovative ways that matching funds can be used to really engage the crowd and to drive that momentum. And it helps to bring the attention to the causes that really need the support. So they, of course, have to put some skin in the game. It makes them prove themselves by doing the work first. And so it's actually a lot more sustainable as an approach, as an alternative finance, because you're not just giving away, you're saying, if you put your effort in, we'll match your effort. And that helps people to move forward, so that next time, even when the matching funds aren't there, they can move forward and succeed. So we've had success of matching funds in all the countries that we operate.
Thank you for the reply. Kai, Patrick, if you'd like to maybe to add something.
Sure. Just to add to that, yes, again, at Mchanga in the donation space, we've seen matching funds as a big driver towards success, and surprisingly in a broad spectrum of the types of fundraisers. We see matching funds as really a bridge, right, between more larger corporate, organization type donations and then the crowd. And like Matt said, the pace at which the matching funds are applied to the campaign works very well. I'll just give a couple of examples. We've had sports teams raise money from the crowd and then get sponsorship, matching at the other end. We've seen organizations that are part of the Africa Philanthropy Network, the Rotarian clubs, use the same approach. You raise from the small community chapters, and then you get the larger donations on the back. And so it's a really powerful driver. And it does bridge the two sectors, individual donation and corporate donation.
Thank you so much. Of course, why we are here, because all of our organizations, your organizations, and also, of course, ISDB, ISVD, UNDP, we want to work with crowdfunding. We definitely see a huge potential, specifically in developing markets, not only to support local communities, but again, to create the bridges between diaspora and the home countries, which I think is very important. And again, we are going back to what Patrick said, not only for community development, but again, for building the trust, which was once lost. Do you have any kind of suggestion?
Yeah, maybe just on that, I could actually add on that actually,
yes.
So while the matching funds are very powerful to leverage further donations or further support, the other side of it is for a potential funder like the UNDP or Tadamon, or in South Africa, for example, like Standard Bank, who's working with Matt. Standard Bank would have a huge amount of difficulty of both dispersing and vetting and tracking the impact of 200 different small little loans or small little funds or small grants. However, when they can use, and it speaks to the trust, when they can use a platform which says, look, we'll give you a whole chunk of capital to invest on a match funding basis in numerous small little interventions, that answers a challenge for them because they cannot do that at the level. The platform, however, or platforms answer that challenge where we can say as a platform, look, we're the trusted intermediary that is able to take on those funds and then match them to hundreds of small individual campaigns.
Definitely. Definitely. I also see, like, usually people see crowdfunding as something creative, campaign, but I don't see sort of the depths first, like, again, with creating these bridges and like using intermediary, which are the platforms. And then, of course, creating the projects that are bringing back the trust of the community. I think there's definitely a lot of like work and research to be done by our participants today. And again, I think it's also sort of the personal journey of from each of them to explore and see how they can work with your platform, what kind of and type of the projects they can set up, and how they can invite the diaspora or the relatives or, like, again, the local communities to invest in their projects. Definitely, we received so many questions, and I think this is really, really important discussion that we have. I think we could discuss for the next 3 to 5 hours. One of the questions that I want to ask, and this is very interesting to us as also the UNDP, what is the recommendation that you have for the Tadamon, for the partnership between the UNDP, ISDB, and ISVD and Tadamon campaigns? Do you have any suggestion? We are now, that's why we're organizing these calls to, of course, better understand how to work together. So what is your suggestion in terms of like the campaigns that we should have? What type of the impact when we are developing the campaigns, who to put or like who to contact as possible supporters? Is it diaspora? Should we do it like on the local level, collecting the money from the local communities? So any kind of the type of the advice that you see, again, matching funds, please share with us. I will start with Kiai, and then as I see it on my screen, Patrick, and then Matthew.
Sure. I think, in our 10 years, what we've seen, as driving success, especially for collaborations such as this, and it may not be very apparent at first, is that while ultimately we're trying to help, the most vulnerable, types of parts of society or organizations that need this type of technology the most, the demonstration effect is very powerful. So for collaborations like this, what we've seen as driving success is getting successful or getting campaigns and collaborations that are most likely to drive success at first to then be the demonstration effect for the rest. So really cherry picking the most likely successful campaigns around, very popular areas of philanthropy would be a good driver. Essentially, using that as a way to show that this actually can be done, and we find that that's very effective.
Thank you so much, Kiai.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think the success stories element is really key. I think to start with the actual actors on the ground, the ones who are really there where the impact is, they need education. They need to understand what crowdfunding is. They need to be taught how it works and how to be effective, to learn from the success stories and all that. So a lot of effort does need to be put into the capacity building of the beneficiaries. Secondly, I'd say storytelling is one of the most powerful things to humanity. And so learning to craft that story and working with each NGO and all the actors to tell those stories and to convey what they're doing, that's a really key part. And if you can't tell your story, you don't evoke the emotion, you don't get the support you need, because crowdfunding is just as much about raising awareness as it is about raising funds. Going back to the matching fund element, I like to think in the VC world, there's something like 5 or 6 investors for every lead investor. And I'd say when an organization has a lead donor, it inspires trust from non-lead donors. So that's the rest of the crowd. So that has to be communicated well. The the brand, like UNDP, ISTB, it's all trusted brands, and that needs to be leveraged to help the organization to benefit from that credibility and to get into that story. And then finally, it's just focusing on impact. We've mentioned it a lot. It can be, you know, a term that's thrown around, but being able to measure and focus on that impact, I think it's a long-term strategy, and that's something that you know, we'll need to come together and really brainstorm what that might look like and how to do that. So rather than short-term project-based, what does that look like in the long run? How do we? I think what Patrick was saying before, the people who fund projects, they don't just want to fund a project, feel good about themselves and move on. They want to see it succeed. They want to be part of its future success. They want to be engaged. They want to have all those updates and follow-ons, which is typically what the organizations are not very good at doing. And like reaching out to a big funder versus a crowd of funders, it's a different communication style that's needed. So that communication and impact and storytelling needs to be passed on to the organizations on the ground to do that effectively. And we can build the tools to do that. And I think that's important.
Thank you so much. I see Chai raised his hands. Thank you so much, Matthew. Really useful tips.
So yes, I would just like to add to what Matthew said about the power of related fundraisers and communities. What we've seen also work well in the platform, particularly around programs like this, is if there's cross-pollination that happens. So for example, if you have CSOs or NGOs that are doing things around water and sanitation, grouping them together really allows them to grow their networks and have cross-pollination across their networks. So related campaigns and grouping them together and working with them together for the common and broader good also tends to drive the success of collaborations like this.
Yeah, you know, most of what I'm saying will actually just add to what Matt and Chai have already said. You know, I often talk about you know, in terms of focusing on successful campaigns as the panda strategy or the rhino strategy. The best way to conserve an ecosystem is to focus on your poster child animals. Oddly enough, when you conserve the panda, you conserve the whole bamboo forest. Same thing when you conserve the rhino, you conserve the whole ecosystem. And it comes through in crowdfunding as well. If people are drawn by emotive, powerful stories, and then oddly enough, because people are aware of what crowdfunding is and see how powerful it is, then it benefits many other less emotive or less, you know, sort of, you know, in your face kind of campaigns, let's say. And then that matching fund side, you know, as Matt was saying, how do people, what gives people that trust element? When they see, I'll use Standard Bank again as an example, that a big organization is saying, we believe that this platform is trusted and these campaigns are trusted enough that we are going to match your donations. That immediately tells you have an anchor tenant or an anchor donor who then provides a trust element for anybody else to get on board. And I think that's right. It's one of the really powerful things around you know, having your anchor donors or investors. And then that last thing, you know, if you think someone backs a small business and they put in $50, the campaign itself raises $5,000. The impact that you can then report on or get recognition for or speak to your friends about is not the $50 you put in. It's the impact that is created by the $5,000 investment that has now gone into that small business and grown it. The value is returned to the backer or the donor in multiples of the actual initial investment, because they can now then speak to their friends about this amazing small business they've invested in. They can recognize that actually they have had a significant impact on the world by being part of this community. The result of that is that they are then more likely to support future campaigns or future small businesses. And as Chai was talking about, if someone has a passion for, I don't know, the creative arts, if they see value delivered by seeing impact, by seeing the project being successful in the one campaign they back, then they're going to back a whole bunch more. And so you start to drive behavioral change where people start to say, actually, yes, because I can now trust that my investment is resulting in impact, and I can see it through the updates and the communications coming through post the campaign, I will now invest in future. So it's a very nice kind of sort of coming together where you work with many small individuals through platforms, many backers or donors, and then this intermediary acts as a communication mechanism to show that you can trust that your funds have been well used.
Thank you so much, Patrick. This is really inspirational for, let's say, sort of the end of this webinar. Maybe we can like take one more question from the public. And of course, I would urge the whole public and the people that are listening to us on the Facebook, and of course, they'll be listening later to the recording. Please, if you have any kind of the technical type of the question, reach out directly to our speakers, to their platforms. I will just not use the time now to discuss that, but more sort of the overall thing that is good for the well-being from all of us. So one more question. I'm just reading the questions. I mean, these are all excellent questions. Just maybe then to ask one question that is, I think, interested to all of us is, what is your example of the most successful crowdfunding campaign or the initiative or experience that you had on your platform? I think this is something also good to finish in the positive note and to give the encouragements to all of the participants to try crowdfunding. So, Kiai, Patrick, Matthew.
So for Mtanga, what we've seen as by far the most successful types of campaigns are ones that are really around, disaster or a life shock, right? So COVID is an example. There was, lots of very large campaigns around that for, lost income and emergency interventions, drought, flood. It's just really the human condition, and we find that campaigns around that, where speed is very important, and the amounts raised are also very important, tend to be the most successful campaigns.
Thank you so much. Matthew? I apologize, Patrick, and then Matthew.
Okay. Very much the same with Chai. There's an organization in South Africa called Gift of the Givers, which is our equivalent of the International Red Cross. They're a very, very impactful disaster relief organization. They're based in South Africa, but they actually operate across the world. And started by a man called Imtiaz Suleiman. Phenomenal man. And through COVID and beyond, we've raised probably over about 14 million, so it's about $1 million has been raised with them for disaster relief. And what is interesting is that what we're seeing is that people are no longer just interested in supporting the Red Cross or Oxfam or a Gift of the Givers. They want to know where their donation or where their business support has actually gone. And they want to understand, like, if they supported this project or this disaster or this flood, how were their funds used? So and I think that's been driven by our ability to engage at the level, at the granular level that the internet has allowed, and these various different communications platforms, whether it's through TikTok, whether it's through Be Real, or whether it's through the more old school Facebook. And that means that people are able to say, like, I gave $50. Where did it go towards which project, which family did it help? So disaster relief, very powerful. And on the other side, in medical needs, we have over 800 campaigns go live a month. And many of those are for individual people with individual medical needs, for an operation, for cancer treatment, for disabilities. very emotive, and crowdfunding is very powerful. And that crosses all borders. It doesn't matter. I saw a comment around, which crowdfunding platforms are powerful in the Arab region. It's not something I can answer to, but what I can say is, especially within the medical space, there are no borders for the ability for crowdfunding to be successful there or effective.
Thanks. I'd like to give a couple of short examples, because I'm looking at impact in terms of what happens way after the campaign. So one rewards-based platform that happened in Kenya was Enda Shoes, which is a sports brand. They managed to raise a couple of 100,000 through 2 campaigns. But a few years later, they managed to raise millions of dollars in funding from venture capitalists. And so the crowd actually signaled that they would be a successful brand, that people already wanted their product, and allowed them to scale much larger. So the investor readiness signal that crowdfunding can have, which similar for even social enterprise, to show that there's something viable here and it should be supported. And the other example would be, there's been lots of conservation projects. One of them is called the Wilds. They also raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in support, but even more than that, they received a lot of in-kind support. And I think a lot of the organizations here will experience the effort they put into crowdfunding. They may not see it immediately come in the form of cash, but in the long term, that exposure that's created, even getting your campaign in front of the right person, can lead you to getting lots of long-term impact, such as partners, people have gifted land before, people have gifted machinery. And so there's a lot more giving that goes on behind the scenes that are not necessarily captured on our platform, but we hear from the campaigns in the months, years after the campaigns on how successful it's helped them pitch themselves for the future. So that's really an encouragement for all the campaigns, is just try to get your campaign in front of the right audience, and who knows what kind of impact you might find from that.
Dear speakers, thank you so much. I think I'm done with my part, and I think we have finished in a very positive note, something again encouraging for our participants. And I'm now leaving the floor to Svetla to give us the final words. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina, and thank you to all our wonderful speakers. We had Elizabeth drop off, but she had a great intro in the end to set the stage. There were a lot of questions, a lot of interest from our audience, and I think you touched upon many of the more technical questions with regard to, what is essentially a crowdfunding campaign, like what are the elements that are really important in getting that impact and getting the community to be engaged with the crowdfunding campaign. With that regard, I'd like to welcome kind of the participants that are in our webinar today to take a look at our Tadamon Capacity Strengthening Hub. I've just dropped the link. If they're interested to learn more about the technicalities around crowdfunding and learn more in detail the specifics, they can access this hub and access courses in relation to crowdfunding. And of course, we'll be sharing information about the 3 platforms that joined us today, the leaders of these platforms, and links to them so that you can explore them and see how you can use them in your own crowdfunding campaigns. So thank you, first of all, to the speakers, to our wonderful partners at ISFD and ISDB who are with us here today and enriched our discussion. And thank you to all of the audience that has stayed with us even beyond the time limit of our webinar. So thank you, everyone. And we'll be sharing a recording for your interest following the end of this webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Just final comments. If our colleague from Thika would like to take a screenshot for us and for our internal and external press release. So Ishraq, you are with us, right?
Yes, brother. Yes, I am with you. Is everyone ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Can we have all the cameras turned on, please? All right. So if once everyone is ready, just let me know so that I can take a screenshot from my side on my count. Okay. All right. Count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Smile, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishraq.
Thank you.
Ciao,
Thank
ciao.
you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Cheers.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.